In this video, I'm going to reveal the 8 hidden dangers of overgiving and why being too kind can actually turn against you. By the end of this video, you'll understand the 8 ways your generosity might be causing more harm than good, and how to protect yourself without losing your compassionate nature. Miss this, and you could be setting yourself up for burnout and resentment without even realizing it. First, let's define overgiving. It's when your acts of kindness go beyond what's healthy or sustainable for you. It's not just about being generous, it's about giving so much of yourself that it starts to negatively impact your well-being. Unlike regular acts of kindness, which are balanced and come from a place of abundance, overgiving often comes from a need to be needed, to gain approval, or to avoid conflict. It's when you say yes, when you really want to say no, or when you keep giving even when it's clear that it's draining you emotionally or physically. Now that we've defined overgiving and why it happens, let's dive into the real impact it can have. Here are 8 ways overgiving can actually turn against you, leaving you feeling drained, unappreciated, and even vulnerable. Understanding these pitfalls will help you recognize when your kindness is doing more harm than good. Number 1. Emotional burnout. One of the biggest risks of overgiving is emotional burnout. When you're constantly giving to others without getting anything in return, it starts to wear you down. Imagine your energy and emotions as a battery. Every time you give, you're using up some of that energy. But if you're not getting anything back, that battery never gets recharged. Over time, this leads to exhaustion, where you feel like you have nothing left to give, yet the demands keep coming. For example, think about the times when you've gone out of your way to help someone, maybe by taking on extra tasks at work or being there for a friend in crisis, only to realize that no one is doing the same for you. At first, you might push through, thinking it's just part of being a good person, but eventually, you start to feel drained. This is emotional burnout, a state where you're completely spent because you've been giving too much for too long without any reciprocation. It's not just about physical exhaustion, it's about feeling emotionally tapped out, where even the thought of helping someone else feels like too much. If left unchecked, this kind of burnout can lead to a cycle of resentment and further emotional depletion. Number 2. Resentment. Overgiving can often lead to a powerful and corrosive emotion, resentment. When you find yourself constantly giving and your kindness isn't reciprocated or even acknowledged, it's natural to start feeling bitter. You might begin to wonder, why am I always the one who gives but no one seems to appreciate it? This is where resentment starts to creep in. Resentment can be incredibly damaging, both to your relationships and your self-esteem. In relationships, it acts like a slow poison, gradually eroding the connection you once had with others. The more you give without receiving any appreciation, the more you might start to feel disconnected and undervalued. This can create a widening gap between you and the people you care about as your feelings of frustration build up over time. But the impact of resentment doesn't stop there. It can also take a toll on your self-worth. When your kindness is repeatedly taken for granted, it's easy to internalize the lack of appreciation and start questioning your own value. Thoughts like, maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I don't deserve recognition, can start to dominate your mindset, leading you into a vicious cycle. In this cycle, you might keep giving more in the hopes of finally being valued, only to feel even more resentful when that recognition doesn't come. To avoid falling into this trap, it's essential to recognize when your giving isn't being valued and to establish boundaries that protect your emotional health. It's perfectly okay to expect appreciation and to step back when it's not there. Remember, your kindness should be a source of strength and fulfillment, not a burden that weighs you down. Number 3. Enabling negative behavior. One of the less obvious but highly significant dangers of overgiving is that it can unintentionally enable negative behavior in others. When you're constantly giving, whether it's your time, energy, or resources, it's easy for others to become overly dependent on your generosity. What starts as a genuine desire to help can quickly turn into a situation where people start to take advantage of your kindness. For example, imagine a friend who always relies on you to solve their problems. Initially, you might feel good about being the person they can turn to in tough times. However, over time, this dynamic can shift. Instead of trying to solve their own problems, your friend might start to rely on you as their go-to fixer for every issue. This can lead to a toxic cycle where your friend's personal growth is stunted because they never have to face challenges on their own. In relationships, this enabling behavior can create an imbalance of power and responsibility. You may find find yourself in a situation where you're constantly giving and the other person is always taking, with little effort on their part to contribute equally. This can foster a sense of entitlement in the other person, where they come to expect your help as a given rather than something to be appreciated. The problem with enabling negative behavior is that it doesn't just affect the person you're helping, it also takes a toll on you. As you continue to give, you might start to feel overwhelmed. The more you enable, the harder it becomes to set boundaries, and the more entrenched these toxic dynamics become. To prevent this, it's crucial to recognize when your giving is no longer helpful, but is instead allowing someone to avoid taking responsibility for their own actions. Setting clear boundaries and encouraging others to solve their own problems can help maintain a healthier balance in your relationships. Remember, true kindness isn't about doing everything for others. It's about supporting them in a way that also respects your own well-being. Number 4, loss of personal boundaries. Overgiving doesn't just deplete your energy, it can also blur the lines of your personal boundaries, leading to a loss of control over your own life and decisions. When you're constantly putting others' needs ahead of your own, it's easy to lose sight of where your responsibilities end and someone else's begin. This can create a situation where you feel like you're being pulled in multiple directions, leaving little room to focus on your own goals and well-being. One of the key issues with overgiving is that it often comes from a place of wanting to be helpful or kind. However, when you say yes to every request or offer assistance even when you don't have the capacity, you start to erode the boundaries that protect your time, energy, and mental health. Before you know it, you might find yourself overwhelmed, with no time left for your own needs. For example, you might constantly make yourself available to friends or family, even when you're exhausted. This can lead to a situation where others begin to expect your constant availability, and you feel unable to say no without guilt or fear of disappointing them. To regain control over your life and maintain healthy boundaries, it's important to recognize the signs of overgiving and take proactive steps to protect your personal space. Here are some strategies that can help. 1. Learn to say no. It's okay to decline requests when you're stretched too thin or when saying yes would compromise your own well-being. Remember, no is a complete sentence, and you don't owe anyone an explanation for prioritizing your own needs. 2. Set clear boundaries. Clearly define what you are and aren't willing to do in your relationships, whether it's at work, with friends, or with family. Communicate these boundaries openly and consistently to prevent misunderstandings. 3. Prioritize your own needs. Make sure you're taking time for self-care and focusing on your own goals. When you prioritize your needs, you're better equipped to help others without sacrificing your own well-being. By maintaining these boundaries, you can continue to be kind and supportive while also preserving your own energy and mental health. Remember, true kindness includes being kind to yourself as well. Number 5. Devaluation of kindness. One of the most disheartening consequences of overgiving is that it can lead others to take your kindness for granted, ultimately devaluing your efforts. When you're always available to help, always ready to give, it's easy for people to start seeing your kindness as something they're entitled to rather than something they should appreciate. Over time, what was once a generous act of goodwill can be seen as just another expectation. This devaluation of kindness occurs when your generosity becomes so routine that others stop recognizing it as a gift. They might begin to assume that you'll always be there to pick up the slack, lend a hand, or offer support, without ever acknowledging the effort and energy you're putting in. When this happens, your acts of kindness lose their significance, both to the people you're helping and to yourself. For example, you might always be the one to stay late at work to help a colleague with their tasks, or the friend who always listens to others' problems but never receives the same level of support in return. Initially, these actions may be deeply appreciated, but over time, they can become expected. When that happens, your kindness is no longer seen as something special, but rather as something ordinary and unremarkable. To prevent this from happening, it's crucial to make your kindness meaningful by setting limits. Here's how you can do that. 1. Be selective with your giving. Focus your energy on situations where your kindness will be truly appreciated and where it can make a genuine impact. By being selective, you ensure that your acts of kindness remain valuable and are not taken for granted. 2. Set clear expectations. Communicate your boundaries and let others know that while you're happy to help, there are limits to what you can do. This helps manage expectations and prevents others from becoming too reliant on your generosity. 3. Recognize your own worth. Understand that your kindness is a valuable resource. By setting boundaries, you're not only protecting yourself, but you're also teaching others to appreciate and respect the help you offer. Remember, kindness is a gift, not an obligation, Number 6, decreased self-worth. Overgiving can have a profound impact on your self-worth, especially when your kindness isn't acknowledged or appreciated. When you constantly give and don't receive the recognition or gratitude you deserve, it's easy to start questioning your own value. You might begin to wonder, am I only valuable when I'm giving to others? This mindset can lead to a dangerous spiral where your self-worth becomes tied to how much you give rather than who you are as a person. The connection between overgiving and decreased self-worth often stems from a deep desire to be needed or valued by others. When you give, you might feel a temporary boost in self-esteem, especially if your kindness is met with praise or thanks. However, when that recognition is absent, the opposite can occur. You may start to feel invisible, unappreciated, and ultimately less worthy. This can lead to a harmful pattern where you give more and more, hoping to find validation, only to feel even more depleted when it doesn't come. For example, you might go out of your way to help a colleague with their work, expecting a simple thank you in return. But when that gratitude isn't expressed, you might feel undervalued, leading to thoughts like, why am I not appreciated, or what's wrong with me? Over time, these feelings can erode your self-esteem, making you feel like your worth is solely dependent on how much you do for others. To break this cycle, it's essential to understand that your self-worth is not, and should not be, tied to how much you give to others. Here are some strategies to help you maintain a healthy sense of self-worth. 1. Recognize your intrinsic value. Your worth is inherent and not dependent on external validation. Remind yourself that you are valuable simply because of who you are, not because of what you do for others. Your kindness is just one aspect of your overall value as a person. 2. Seek internal validation. Instead of looking for validation from others, focus on validating yourself. Reflect on the good you do and take pride in it, regardless of whether others acknowledge it. Practice self-compassion and remind yourself that you deserve love and respect, both from others and from yourself. By understanding that your self-worth is not tied to your level of giving, you can protect yourself from the negative effects of overgiving and maintain a healthy, balanced sense of self. Number 7, increase stress and anxiety. Overgiving can often lead to increased stress and anxiety, especially when it shifts from being a genuine act of kindness to a compulsive habit or an expectation you feel obligated to meet. When you constantly prioritize others' needs over your own, the pressure to always be available, helpful, and giving can become overwhelming. This pressure, combined with the fear of disappointing others, can significantly elevate your stress levels and fuel anxiety. When giving becomes a compulsion, you might start to feel like you're never doing enough, no matter how much you give. You might worry excessively about letting others down or not meeting their expectations, leading to a cycle of stress where you're constantly anxious about whether you're being kind enough. This anxiety can permeate all areas of your life, making it difficult to relax, focus on your own needs, or even enjoy the act of giving. For example, you might find yourself agreeing to every request for help, even when you're already stretched thin. The more you give, the more people may come to expect from you, and soon, what started as voluntary acts of kindness may feel like burdensome obligations. The result is a constant state of stress, where you're always on edge, worrying about how to juggle everyone else's needs without collapsing under the pressure. To manage this stress and anxiety while still being kind, it's important to find a balance that allows you to give generously without sacrificing your own well-being. Here are some methods to help you achieve that balance. 1. Prioritize self-care. Make self-care a non-negotiable part of your routine. Ensure that you're taking care of your physical, emotional, and mental health before you extend yourself to others. Remember, you can't pour from an empty cup, and taking care of yourself enables you to give from a place of abundance rather than exhaustion. 2. Practice mindfulness. Mindfulness can help you stay grounded and reduce the anxiety that comes with overgiving. Take time each day to check in with yourself. Notice how you're feeling and address any stress or anxiety before it escalates. Mindful breathing, meditation, or simply taking a few moments to relax can help you manage your stress levels. 3. Focus on quality over quantity. Instead of trying to give to everyone all the time, focus on making your acts of kindness more meaningful and intentional. By giving in a way that truly matters, you can derive more satisfaction from your actions and reduce the compulsion to constantly give. Kindness is most effective when it's given freely and joyfully, not when it's driven by compulsion or fear. Find your balance, and you'll be able to give in a way that enriches both your life and the lives of those you care about. Number 8. Vulnerability to manipulation. One of the most concerning risks of overgiving is that it can make you more vulnerable to manipulation. When you're known for your generosity and willingness to help, there's a danger that some people might see this as an opportunity to take advantage of you. Manipulators often prey on those who are kind-hearted, using guilt, flattery, or even subtle pressure to exploit your giving nature for their own benefit. Overgiving creates a dynamic where your boundaries might be more easily crossed because you're focused on pleasing others or avoiding conflict. Manipulative individuals can sense this and may push you to give more than you're comfortable with, all while making it seem like you're doing it out of your own free will. They might play on your emotions, making you feel responsible for their happiness or success, which can lead you to give even when it's not in your best interest. For example, you might have a friend who frequently asks for favors, each time framing the request in a way that makes it hard for you to say no. They might say things like, "I don't know what I'd do without you," or "You're the only person I can count on," making you feel indispensable. This kind of language can be a red flag for manipulation, especially if the favors are one-sided and increasingly demanding. To protect yourself from being manipulated, it's important to recognize the signs and take proactive steps to maintain your autonomy and well-being. Here are some tips to help you avoid manipulative situations. 1. Trust your instincts. If something feels off or if you notice that you're always the one giving in a relationship, it's worth taking a step back and evaluating the situation. Your gut feelings can often alert you to manipulative behavior before your mind fully registers it. 2. Watch for red flags. Be on the lookout for behaviors that indicate manipulation, such as guilt-tripping, excessive flattery, or making you feel responsible for their problems. If someone tries to make you feel bad for not giving in to their demands, that's a sign they may be trying to manipulate you. Now that we've discussed the hidden dangers of overgiving, let's recap the practical strategies for preventing it and discover how you can continue being kind without sacrificing your own well-being. Number 1. Set clear boundaries. To avoid overextending yourself, establish and communicate clear boundaries with others. This means understanding your own limits and not being afraid to assert them. Number 2. Learn to say no. Saying no when necessary is a powerful tool for protecting your well-being. It can be challenging, especially if you're used to being the one who always helps out, but it's important to remember that declining a request doesn't make you less kind or caring. Instead, it allows you to be more intentional with your kindness, focusing on where you can make the most impact without sacrificing your health. Number 3. Practice self-compassion. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you offer to others. This means acknowledging your own needs and not pushing yourself too hard. Self-compassion involves taking breaks, resting when needed, and not feeling guilty for prioritizing your own well-being. Number 4. Reflect and reassess regularly. Take time to reflect on your patterns of giving. Do you often feel obligated rather than genuinely willing to assist? If so, it may be time to reassess how you're allocating your time and energy. Regular reflection can help you stay in tune with your needs and ensure that your kindness is sustainable. As we wrap up, remember, it's not about giving less. It's about giving in a way that honors both others and yourself. Your kindness is a gift. Make sure it's one that you can afford to give without compromising your own happiness.